Welcome to the channel. My name is Matt Borka, and today we're going to talk about Europe because, quite frankly, we need to admit something. Europe is dying and it's taking its citizens with it. And unless we do something about it, at least the way things are looking now, it's not going to change. Things are not heading in the right direction. I feel something intrinsically bad is going to happen to Europe. I decided, you know what? Let's put a video together and give people an overview of the facts and the data, and also my take on everything that is going on. And I'm also going to share some personal anecdotes that I feel they're pretty relevant to the topic itself. And just full disclosure, I'm originally from Europe. I lived there for 22 years. Oh, actually, I did live there for 22 years, but I lived 22 years in Hungary and 5 years in Scotland. So overall, I lived there pretty much all my life, and I only recently moved to Asia. So to give people an idea, I've been there for a long time, and I've also worked with many European businesses during my career. So I feel I have a good idea of what's going on on the continent and also the issues that we're currently facing. Cool. Now let's have a look at what's going on, and let's talk about some of the facts. And I have everything prepared here on my beautiful computer. So first of all, I want to talk about overregulation, because as probably a lot of you guys know, that has been a problem for a long time. But I have prepared some data on this because I feel everyone talks about Europe being overregulated, but I haven't really watched a video yet where people get into the nitty gritty of like why that is happening, besides some data on GDP and stuff like that. Okay, here we go. So just to give you an idea of how ridiculous it's been getting, we're looking at 13,000 acts adopted over a 5-year period. Okay, so that's only the past 5 years. All right, so it looks ridiculous. I mean, just think about it. It's literally a full-time job to keep up with the regulations, and you still need to manage these businesses. You know, you have to pay people. You need to make sure that the business is running smoothly. You need to make sure that you're providing a great product. And what if you're not doing it only in one country? Maybe you're doing it in several countries. And let's not even get into that, because that's a whole other topic, right? So yeah, we're looking at tons of regulations. 13,000 acts. That's a lot. Okay, what else do we have here? So another really interesting data point I found during my research is that overall compliance efforts led medium-sized companies to spend approximately $3 million in the initial period, 2017 to 2018, compared to $60 million for an average Fortune 500 firm. And we're talking about GDPR, right? Again, that's a lot. And there's been so much pressure and fear-mongering around GDPR, and you have to make sure that you're complying with everything, you're complying with the regulations. You have to make sure that everything's on point. And companies are spending a lot of money on this, a lot of money. And I don't feel it's fair, because if you're being suffocated by all these rules, like, when do you have time to run your business? And when do you have time to do anything else? And to be honest with you, a lot of times what happens is, as a person who has been in business for some time now, I don't want to be in an environment where I'm being overly regulated. I mean, I respect the law, I respect rules, but at the same time, I have all those other things to worry about, right? Especially when you're starting a business, when you have clients to take care of, right? Like, let's say you have a service business. That's what I've been doing for the past 2 years. It's coming up to 3. Yes, you have to pay your tax. right? And make sure that you're complying with everything. But the vast majority of your time will be spent on sales and marketing, right? And also on delivering whatever service you provide. If you really think about it, like when do you have time to look at all these regulations if you're doing business in Europe? You have to because you don't have a choice. Can we safely assume that by looking at regulations constantly and being afraid of not complying with these regulations, you're literally suffocating whatever business you have? Okay. And then another interesting thing I found is that venture deals and funding for EU firms decreased post GDPR by 26.1 for deals and 33.8% total amount. That's ridiculous. Like, I don't even know what to say to this, because Europe has been lagging behind for a couple of decades now, and it's a well-known fact in business circles, in political circles. Everyone knows about this. Yet we're looking at an environment where, sure, data protection and data privacy, they're very important. We have to make sure that everyone is being protected, and I'm not the type of person who would want to do all types of illegal activities. But we have to look at the facts here, right? This is way too much. And when you're looking at places like the United States, yes, there's tons of data regulation laws. If you look into it, there's new ones being released state by state. It started in California, and they're rolling these out across multiple states now, right? And that's actively happening. Fine, it's okay. But when we're looking at the data, it's not looking good. It's not looking good at all. So it's overall, my feelings about regulation is that it's so difficult for businesses to breathe that a lot of times people who have the potential to start businesses, they will go either elsewhere, or they will not start the business because it's way too much. It's for someone new, right? A new business owner to take all this on, plus the stress of starting a new business. And, you have to invest, you have to take on costs and everything. It's too much. It's way too much. My second point is lack of innovation. All right. I'm just going to read it here for you guys. Recent figures place EU R&D intensity at around 2.11 to 2.24% of GDP. This contrasts sharply with the US, which invests approximately 3.5 to 3.59 of its GDP in R&D, and lags significantly behind global leaders like Israel, around 6%, and South Korea, around 5%. Now, why is this important? Because when you have a look at the US, for example, right, all the big tech companies came from the US. Europeans consume American movies, or I'm not sure whether Europeans watch like Korean stuff, but Hollywood movies for sure, right? And it's crazy that if you think back, like let's say the past 20 years, do you know about any big company that did really like extremely well that came from Europe? Yeah, sure, you could say that there are some. I believe Skype is a European company, but there hasn't been any major ones. TikTok's Chinese, right? Snapchat, Facebook, Instagram. All these companies came from the US. YouTube, now it's owned by Google, but the point that I'm trying to make is there's something about the culture in Europe. I grew up there. I've seen it. And many times people are not that entrepreneurial, and people don't want to start businesses. It's people who try to stand out and try to do something big. It's kind of frowned upon. Maybe not that much anymore, But especially when you're younger and you're growing up, it's you go get a job. People don't think about projects and people don't think about doing something bigger. Is if someone wants to do something like that, they're going to go to the US and they're going to network in the US. They may move to the US and they're going to find the right people to make their dreams come true there. If they want to do a startup or something else. And I mean, that's bad. On top of this, there's also the R&D issue, right? Because if you have an existing business, overall, the EU and Europe, they invest less in research and development. And I would also argue that probably they're investing the wrong things because overall there's stagnation in Europe. And there's huge issues with just businesses not developing as fast and quickly and the same way like businesses in the US. And it's very prominent. It's really out there. You can see it, you can feel it, and I don't really feel that it's good for Europe. I think it's bad for Europe. And I definitely think that there has to be something in place in order to enable the European entrepreneurs to get ahead, do the right things. Because again, I get it. Not everyone has to be a business owner. I get it. Some people don't want to do that. Maybe they're going to be significantly happier doing professional work, having a nice and stable office job. I totally get it. But there are people out there who are capable and also willing to be entrepreneurial, and they want to start new businesses. And those people are going to be, or should be, the small business owners who provide jobs for everyday people. But that's not really happening. You have a bunch of big firms who are providing all the jobs, and even those firms are not really innovating. So everything, it's basically a standstill. Nothing's really moving. Everything stays the same. On top of this, I've also noticed a large percentage of people working for businesses remotely. It's becoming more and more popular because, let's say, American businesses provide better pay and compared to European counterparts. So some people say, you know what? I can work remotely. That's fine. And I'm going to make more money. I can stay in Europe. I like Europe. That's fine. But I'm not going to work for a European company. I've seen that too. All right. What else? Young people have no one to look up to. And that's a huge issue because if you have no one to look up to, if there aren't any good examples of, hey, if I want to do this thing, this European person is the best at it, right? And I should talk to him or her. And my thinking is more around business, right? Like there aren't any European industry leaders who are well known, and I mean, yeah, sure, like there are some people, but they're getting older and they don't have a massive online presence. And whereas in the US, a lot of business leaders have massive online presence. I mean, think about Gary Vaynerchuk, think about Alex Hormozi, think about I don't know. Stephen Bartlett. Okay, let's give it to him. He's a European example, but he's very popular in the US, and also I feel the way he's doing things it's very similar to the way American entrepreneurs are operating. But yes, business dealings more often than not are very private in Europe, whereas in the US people are more willing to share ideas, more willing to help other businesses grow. Whereas in Europe, I'm not saying smaller businesses are not supporting each other. It's more like the bigger businesses are not willing to, or more like individuals are not really willing to help, because I mean, I'm not sure if it's because they don't want to have competition or something else, but it's not good. It's not good at all because you can clearly see it. There's no innovation and things are not happening. Final point here is talented Europeans move out. They move out. they don't stay in Europe. And there's also migration westward from the east. So if a person, like, they're good at what they do, whatever, more than likely they're going to work in not necessarily the closest country that provides better opportunities, but definitely a country that provides better opportunities. And I think the easiest way to fix this is to make sure that there are actually opportunities for these people wherever they were born, or at least more options overall. Because I would say that the most talented Europeans are leaving Europe, right? Maybe they moved to London, but I would argue that a lot of these people are going to end up in the United States, are going to end up somewhere, I don't know, Canada. Third point, work-life balance, hierarchies, and nepotism. And I know that this is going to be a slightly touchier subject for some people, but I feel we need to talk about this. We need to discuss it because there are some important implications here that no one is really willing to talk about, and someone has to. So let's talk about them. Recent data indicates particularly weak labor productivity growth in the EU area since the pandemic, increasing by only 0.9% between Q4 2019 and Q2 2024, compared to 6.7% in the US. There could be many reasons for this, but the pandemic has done a lot of harm in many countries. There's been a lot of deaths. There's been a lot of suffering and fear and anxiety. And I think it also caused an economic downturn. And because that happened, it seems like, according to this data, things have gotten worse in Europe. Okay. So Europe has always been kind of known for a more laid back lifestyle. And, there's a lot of laws around protecting citizens, making sure that they're not being overworked and they have a better lifestyle overall. Now, what I have to say about this is that since this has been going on for probably a number of decades, I feel in reality this has never been sustainable. Okay? Because look what happened to the USSR. In the USSR, there's been this sort of like let's chill attitude has been extremely prevalent. And a lot of companies were not profitable. I'm not saying that European companies are not profitable, but this laid back attitude toward work is not great, I feel. Now, I know some people might say in the comments, well, what do you mean? Yeah, I don't want to be overworked like people in the US. Yes, we have to admit that there's a problem there. And that's a whole other video, right? But I feel in Europe specifically, people need to step up their games because the economy doesn't look good. So are we going to wait around and wait for someone else to fix it? In every country, we have an aging population. So it's up to young people to actually do something about this. And again, I'm not saying that you need to work 12-hour days every day type thing. Like, what's the point of that? But we got to put more effort in. If we don't put more effort in, nothing's going to be done. And if nothing's going to be done, we're not moving forward. And the numbers clearly indicate this. I'm not making this up. I'm going to put a link and I'm going to make sure that you guys have access to everything. But anecdotal evidence and also actual data suggest that things are not looking great. And if we're not passionate about what we do, what's the point in doing it? Yeah, sure, we got to make a living and we got to make money. Yeah, sure. Okay. But something is intrinsically wrong here, I feel. Americans are working way too much, and I feel Europeans are not working enough. There has to be a happy place, right? where Americans kind of cut back a little bit and don't burn themselves out, and then Europeans work just a little bit more, right? And it's not even about the working hours, but productivity and how you approach work. Because time and time again, if you've ever done project management or anything else, there could be a lot of hours wasted on meaningless work or tasks that shouldn't have been done in the first place. And it's up to that company's management to ensure that everything is structured correctly and things are moving in the right direction, right? The other aspect of this third point is the current corporate structure in Europe, okay? Because, again, according to research and data, the second involves prevalent corporate structures, which is in many parts of Europe may be characterized by traditional hierarchies and particularly within the significant number of family-owned firms, the practice of nepotism. I actually have stories for you guys when it comes to this because I have a good friend of mine. He works for a family-owned firm. I'm not going to mention the person's name or even the industry. And, we had a call recently. We haven't caught up for a while, and we were kind of talking about his work and what's been happening with him. And he slightly complained to me about everything that has been going on. He's been assigned to a region which he feels he cannot fully contribute to because he's been hindered by management, and those people this is a family business, so like he cannot. So one of the other things that we talked about is that he's not going to be able to get promoted because everyone above him is a family member. So he feels a little stuck right now. But what happened was he's managing these regions, and he felt that changes need to be made in order to make sure that these regions do better. But people from the family are pushing back. They're not really letting him do his thing, and he feels stuck. And I also have my dear brother of mine, and he also works for a family business. Again, not going to mention industry or anything else, but again, the family, because a lot of these smaller businesses are family owned, right? There's a very strict hierarchy that, quite frankly, it's very difficult to get rid of, right? Whereas in the US, yes, there's nepotism in the US as well. There's hierarchical structures in the US as well. But compared to Europe, I feel there's more meritocracy. In Europe, it's very different. Management is not necessarily open to new ideas because if you're not part of the family, maybe you're not going to be involved in major decisions, even though you are a valuable person at the company. Again, I'm not saying that every European company is family owned, but if it's not family owned, I still feel that the hierarchical structure really doesn't help these businesses, because I feel the hierarchical structure is also there with, even if the business is not family owned. So yes, there's a lot of issues like this, and there's tons of data supporting it, that Europe is not in a place where things are, it's not going well, right? It's not going well. It's not moving in the right direction. A lot of people are leaving Europe. And if we think about historical events, we could maybe consider it a political event, Brexit, that had a major impact on the European economy. Obviously, the war also had the war in Ukraine also had a major impact on the European economy. But time and time again, what I'm seeing is that things are slowing down, things are shrinking, and it doesn't feel like that the leadership is taking things seriously. They're more worried about coming up with more and more and more and more rules. And up to this point, it feels like they were relying on international partners for the things that they were lacking. So yeah, that's basically everything. about the topic. So I feel there's a lot for us to discuss maybe in the comments. It's a pretty complex topic. Hopefully you liked all the data I presented. Thank you so much for actually making it this far. This is a complete new format, so feel free to give me any feedback in the comments. And please like, share this video, and subscribe to the channel if you like this. And I'll see you soon.